Well, good morning, everyone. This class is a part of Unit 2 of your paper 3, okay? Angiosperm taxonomy, economic botany, ethnobotany, and phytogeography. Now, in this brief introduction to classifications of flowering plants, we will try to get a sense of all the 10 families mentioned in the Unit 2 so that we get a clear perspective of their taxonomic position in system of classifications given in earlier unit, that is Unit 1 of the same paper, before we understand the distinguishing or identifying characters and their economic importance. But what is equally important is to know what is taxonomy. Well, in biology, the science of classification of organisms according to their resemblances and differences is often defined as taxonomy. Now, the term taxonomy is basically derived from the two words taxis, meaning arrangement, and nomos, which means laws, or in other words, methods. Now, there is another term called systematics, which is often used synonymously or interchangeably with taxonomy, where a proper delineation between the two is extremely difficult. Now, we have to understand this another important part of taxonomy. Now, primarily, there are four basic components of taxonomy, okay? Classification, identification, description, and the correct naming, or otherwise we call it as nomenclature. Now, in brief, when the subject of classification, identification, description, and correct naming is all about plants, then it is called plant taxonomy. The plant kingdom is extremely large and diversified. We are faced with an estimated total of about 300,000, or if fungi is added, it comes to about 450,000 plants. This large number includes many different kinds of plants of a vast range of size and structure. This entire living world of plants forms the subject matter of the plant taxonomy. Now let's go further. Now, plant classification is the grouping of plants into different ranks or taxa. When you use in a singular form, it is called taxon, okay? Now, such as species, genus, family, order, class, and division, according to their degree of resemblances or differences in their characters, which primarily is of morphological in nature. It is also very important that one understands the systems of classification of plants. Of course, however, we will not delve into the details of each of them in this briefing. They will be covered in greater detail in Unit 1. There are three major systems of classification. This is what we all have to understand. Now, there is artificial system of classification, natural system of classification, and also phylogenetic system of classification. Now, there is a purpose why I am bringing all these things in the introductory part of our class today, when we are going to see about the distinctive characters and the economic importance of 10 families mentioned in the syllabus. Now, I am bringing in one of these three systems of classifications given by George Bentham and Joseph Dalton Hooker, the most accepted natural system of classification. The Bentham and Hooker's system of classification is still used and followed in several herbaria of the world. Why I say this is because it's very significant, and we should all remember this, that in our country, in India, and most of Commonwealth countries and British colonies, plants are arranged according to this system of classification. Whose system of classification? Bentham and Hooker natural system of classification. If we have to remember something today, please remember this, never ever to forget again, that in our country, we use this Bentham and Hooker natural system of classification in describing the herbaria, okay? Well, that's yet another topic to be covered in Unit 1, and you will learn in further clarity about it. Now, coming to a topic of discussions about the 10 families mentioned in the syllabus, let us get a clearer perspective where they are being placed, positioned in the classification. Now, before that, we need to also understand that these flowering plants or the angiospermic plants are basically divided into two classes, which right from school days we have known or have learned about what we call as monocotyledons and dicotyledons. Basically, by the presence of the number of cotyledons. That's what we were being taught. But we are going to go a little further today and then try to see the distinctive characters of these two classes of flowering plants, monocots and the dicots. Please remember, according to the Bentham and Hooker system of classification, these angiospermic plants are divided into these two classes, the monocots and the dicots. Okay, and within each of these classes, you will see, the subclasses, the order, then the series, then the families, then the genera and the species. Well, I'll talk about it a little later on. But let me come to this, distinctive characters of these two classes, the monocots and the dicots, because it's very important. Now, please understand, my dear students, here, when we're trying to study these characters, remember, we are basically talking about characters which are tangible, that means we can feel with our hands, or which are visible, or which we can observe externally. These are very important. Of course, there are other disciplines which I will talk a little later on again. So when I say the distinctive characters of the monocots and the dicots, we are basically, for now, talking about the external characters. Now, the monocots are more advanced than the dicots. So if you have to compare between this monocot and dicot, primarily, you will see that monocots are more advanced than the dicots. If you ask me, sir, why do you say this? Because monocots are, in comparison to dicot, they're relatively smaller in size and structures. Look at the grasses all around you. Have you observed the flowers? Perhaps you have not even seen them because they're very small. Okay? So what I'm saying is that the monocots are more advanced than the dicots because they are relatively smaller in size and structure, and they also have certain characters, by which you can identify. If you look at the flowers,